can we do now to today or this week, to move things or steer things in a better direction?
Well, primarily, I mean, Vita Sapien has got two words, which is Vita, which is life, and Sapien, which is wisdom. So the primary thing that she's doing all the time is to work on a deeper understanding of the Earth system, right? And so to understand the Earth system, one wants to take a look at the environmental sciences and the Earth system science, and that should be the primary frame of reference for understanding things like climate change and planetary boundaries.
I really like how the pocketbook is a really good introduction into that.
Yeah, and one of the previous versions of the pocketbook had like a really simple introduction to climate change in about 30 pages. It just went step by step. Right from the very beginning part of it was, did you know that there is 200 trillion tiny particles bouncing off your eyeballs?
I remember that, yes.
Which is like gas theory. So let's establish that there's a gas in the room and that some of that gas is CO2, which because quite often you just jump straight in and start talking about CO2 gas and not realising people are going, sorry, what's a gas?
Sure.
Yeah, so it sort of went step by step just to make that really clear. And climate change is obviously not the only thing that's going on. There's lots going on, but it's by far the biggest one, and it's the one that is most directly tied to human actions right now. That we've got pathways out of those actions to transition away from fossil fuels, and then to draw down greenhouse gas out of the atmosphere, which could put us on a safe path. But of course the drama is that we're not actually doing that. In fact, we're now releasing more CO2 into the atmosphere from fossil fuel burning than before the Paris Agreement was. It's insane. So everything we should be doing, we're going in the wrong direction, right? And even if we were to stop increasing the amount of carbon we're burning, right, we'll be on a plateau, which means that we're still putting an extra 60 or 40 something billion tons of carbon. So the only way out is to actually reduce carbon emissions at around 5, 6, 7% per annum consistently, which is what happened in the first year of COVID, actually. But then, of course, COVID bottomed out and the emissions went up.
Emissions went up again. And they've been increasing every year, rather than, even though we've set new policies and new targets and so on. Emissions still
in part because the global economy continues to grow, which is the driver of the consumption of fuels. So the massive build out of renewables over the last decade, like huge, like seas, oceans of, wind farms and solar fields and all this stuff, imperfect as it is, at least is generating carbon-free energy. All that has really done is just kept up with the additional demand for energy from a growing global economy. So in a way, part of this question is, what can we do right now to make things better? Well, I mean, you can do things to reduce your personal carbon footprint, but that's not fundamentally the nature of the problem at the moment. The problem is that we've got a growth-based economy based on fossil fuels. So how do we get to that? Right, and that's where the Sapien comes in. That's where the thinking it through and figuring out where you as an individual can actually interject into that system. So we have this concept called earthity, which is to live like a good citizen, right? Environmental citizen. Okay, so yes, recycle your gear, yes, reduce meat in your diet, those things, but that's not enough. That's not enough. If everyone did all that, that's great, right? But it's not going to change the fact that we've got 2 trillion tons of excess carbon in the atmosphere. It's just going to slow down the rate it goes in. So it's a transformation in the thinking away from this immediate stuff. You should be doing that anyway, okay? It's about how can I engage my brain to get my head around this problem, find the piece of the problem, and then set my life course on to being a part of fixing that part.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the idea. So the idea of being a Vita Sapien is not that you just tick that box and move right along. It's about devoting your life to the rebellion against extinction.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're talking about is, as well as educating ourselves and taking those actions in our daily lives that we can take, it's about also cultivating a kind of a sense of this greater purpose of Vita Sapienism, and to build, I guess, the commitment and dedication toward living in the verdant age, or making the verdant age possible.
Advancing the verdant age.
Advancing the verdant age.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm 55. I've probably got another 20 or 30 years before I keel over. So if I were, what can I do to, what can I do to be effective? So the term we use is expedient action.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the example is, the house across the road is burning, is on fire, and you go and fill up a saucepan with water, and you walk across the road and you throw it on, and you go back and get another pot of water. Well, good on you for having a go, right? Good on you. But is that the best you can be doing? Better still, you run around and alert the neighbours. Make sure that at least one of them's called the fire brigade.
Yeah.
Organise a bucket brigade.
Yeah.
Organise the hoses. Right. Yeah. That's expedient.
Yeah.
So what we're sort of calling for people to do, and this is the sapient part, is to think through and then get the additional knowledge if you don't have it, right? Mm-hmm. Is to be expedient, which is what's the most that you can do with your life to make this change, because the change is coming up upon us. It's so rapid now. I mean, I've been following climate change. When I started teaching people about climate change 20 years ago, right? So say in the year 2000, right? The story we had, the best information we had from the UN's science on the subject was that we were going to have a big problem at the end of the century if we didn't act. Right? So these sort of incremental changes were kind of okay as long as you continue them for a century. Well, it's 2023 and that whole crisis is upon us now.
Yeah.
It's 80 years earlier.
Yeah.
And what the scientists are now saying, like for example, there's enough carbon in the atmosphere now to take us to 7 or 8 degrees above baseline, and that puts you right back into the permanent extinction.
Yeah. That
takes out most life on Earth.
Yeah.
So this is not some small thing anymore. This is not something that will get fixed by attending a protest or signing on to a newsletter. This will get fixed when a substantial proportion of people commit their lives to it. Mm-hmm. And that's the call to action.
Yeah.
You did ask. Enough?
That's more than enough.